Psalm 99, God's Holiness and Sovereignty. Psalm 99 is the concluding psalm in a collection known as the Kingship Psalms, Psalms 93 to 99, which emphasize the reign of God with the repeated declaration, "The Lord reigns." This particular psalm stands out as a hymn of awe, reverence, and praise, focusing specifically on the holiness of God. The psalm unfolds in three distinct parts, each ending with the powerful refrain, "He is holy," underscoring the central theme of God's absolute purity, uniqueness, and moral perfection. The opening section of Psalm 99 highlights God's holy reign over all creation, inspiring both fear and worship among the peoples. The bold proclamation, "The Lord reigns," affirms God's sovereign rule over the entire earth. His presence between the cherubim alludes to the divine throne in the Holy of Holies, above the Ark of the Covenant, symbolizing God's majestic kingship and glory. This presence causes the earth to tremble, a vivid expression of awe and reverence before God's transcendent power. The psalmist emphasizes that God is exalted far above all peoples, asserting his unmatched authority and holiness. The first refrain, "He is holy," captures the overwhelming sense of God's separateness, purity, and perfection that commands worship. In the second section, the focus shifts to God's holy justice in Zion, emphasizing that his reign is marked not by arbitrary might but by righteousness and equity. The psalm declares that the king's strength is intimately connected with his love for justice, which is not merely an ideal but a living reality in his kingdom, especially evident in Jacob, Israel. Worshippers are called to exalt the Lord and to worship at his footstool, which likely refers to the ark or the temple, the sacred place where heaven and earth meet. This summons to worship reflects the acknowledgement of God's just and holy rule. The second refrain, "He is holy," reaffirms God's moral perfection and sets the tone for humble and reverent adoration. The final section of the psalm highlights God's holy relationship with his people, focusing on his interactions with Israel's leaders, Moses, Aaron, and Samuel. These figures represent priestly and prophetic roles, embodying faithful intercession on behalf of the people. The psalm recounts how these leaders called upon the Lord, and he answered them, speaking through them and receiving their obedience. Notably, God's holiness is shown in his balance of mercy and discipline. He forgives his servants but also disciplines them when necessary. This dynamic portrays God's holiness as both just and compassionate. The psalm concludes with the third and most emphatic refrain, "The Lord our God is holy," making the truth not only about God's nature but also about his covenant relationship with his people, inviting them into reverent communion. Psalm 99 conveys several key themes. The dominant theme is God's holiness, repeated 3 times to emphasize his utter uniqueness, purity, and righteousness. Alongside holiness, the psalm stresses God's sovereignty as king over all creation and his covenant people. The theme of justice and equity is prominent, portraying God's reign as morally perfect and just. In response, worship and reverence arise as natural and necessary, calling for deep humility and awe. Finally, God's mercy and discipline reveal the fullness of his holy character, demonstrating that his justice is never cruel but balanced with forgiveness and correction. The New Testament resonates with the themes of Psalm 99, particularly the repeated declaration "He is holy," which points directly to Christ as the Holy One, as seen in passages like Mark 1 verse 24 and Acts 3 verse 14. Jesus fulfills the roles of priest, prophet, and mediator exemplified by Aaron, Samuel, and Moses. In him, the perfect balance of mercy and justice is realized, as he both forgives sin and bears God's righteous judgment on behalf of humanity. In summary, Psalm 99 is a reverent anthem that declares God as King, exalted above all nations, holy in power, justice, mercy, and righteousness. It calls believers to respond with trembling awe, heartfelt praise, and worship marked by joy and humility. Far from casual, this psalm demands a deep reverence before a holy God whose reign is supreme and whose character is wholly worthy of our worship.
Psalm 99. The Lord reigns. Let the peoples tremble. He dwells between the cherubim. Let the earth be moved. The Lord is great in Zion, and he is high above all the peoples. Let them praise your great and awesome name. He is holy. The king's strength also loves justice. You have established equity. You have executed justice and righteousness in Jacob. Exalt the Lord our God and worship at his footstool. He is holy. Moses and Aaron were among his priests, and Samuel was among those who called upon his name. They called upon the Lord, and he answered them. He spoke to them in the cloudy pillar. They kept his testimonies and the ordinance he gave them. You answered them, O Lord our God. You were to them God who forgives, though you took vengeance on their deeds. Exalt the Lord our God, and worship at his holy hill, for the Lord our God is holy.